Rajajanandana Yashodanandana Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, ki Hari. Something about showing praise together. Om Ajnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudavadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaganarvanatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23. Chapter is entitled Maharaj Prithu's Going Back Home, and we'll read verse 33. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Tri Kritva
Idam
Akarnya Tri Kritva Idam Akarnya Tri Kritva Idam Akarnya Naro Nar Yatavadrita Naro Nar Yatavadrita Naro Nar Yatavadrita Apraja Suprajatama Apraja Suprajatama Apraja Suprajatama Nirdhana Dhanavattama Nirdhano Dhanavattama Trikritva Idama Karnya Naro Naryatavadrita Apraja Suprajatama Nirdhano Dhanavattama Trikritva Idama Karnya Naro Naryatavadrita Apraja Suprajatama Nirdhano Dhanavattama Trikritva Idama Karnya Naro Naryatavadrita Apraja Suprajatama Nirdhano Dhanavattama
Trikritva Idamakarnya Naro Naryatavadrita Apraja Suprajatamo Nirdhano Dhanavattama Trikritva idamakarnya
Trikritva idamakarnya
Naro nariyathavadrita
Naro nariyathavadrita
Apraja suprajatamo
Apraja suprajatamo
Nidhano dhanavattamaha
Nirjano dhanavattamaha
Trikritva idamakarnya
Trikritva idamakarnya
Naro nariyathavadrita
Naro nariyathavadrita
Apraja suprajatmo
Apraja suprajatamo
Nirdhano dhanavattamaha
Nirdhano dhanavattamaha
Trikritva idamakarnya
Trikritva idamakarnya
Naro nariyathavadrita
Naro nariyathavadrita
Apraja suprajatamo
Apraja suprajatamo
Nirdhano dhanavattamaha
Nirdhano dhanavattamaha
Trikritva idamakarnya
Trikritva idamakarnya
Naro nariyathavadrita
Naro nariyathavadrita
Apraja suprajatmo
Apraja suprajatamo
Nirdhano dhanavattamaha
Nirdhano dhanavattamaha Thrice. Kritva. Repeating. Idam. This. Akarnya. Hearing. Naraha. Man. Nari. Woman. Athava. Or. Adrita. In great respect. Apraja. One who has no children. Suprajatamaha. Surrounded by many children. Nirdhanaha. Without any money. Dhanavat. Rich. Tamaha. The greatest. Translation and purport by Swami Srila Prabhupada. It does not matter whether one is a man or a woman. Anyone who with great respect hears this narration of Maharaj Prithu will become the father of many children if he is without children, and will become the richest of men if he is without money. Please repeat. It does not matter whether one is a man or a woman. It does not matter whether one is a man or a woman. Anyone who with great respect hears this narration of Maharaj Prithu will become the father of many children if he is without children, and will become the richest of men if he is without money. Purport. Materialistic persons who are very fond of money and great families worship different demigods to attain their desires, especially Goddess Durga, Lord Shiva, and Lord Brahma. Such materialistic persons are called Shreyashvarya Prajepsavaha. Shri means beauty, Aishwarya means riches, Praja means children, and Ipsava means desiring. As described in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, one has to worship various demigods for different types of benedictions. However, here it is indicated that simply by hearing of the life and character of Maharaj Prithu, one can have both riches and children in enormous quantities. One simply has to read and understand the history, the life and activities of Prithu Maharaj. It is advised that one read them at least 3 times. Those who are materially afflicted will so benefit by hearing of the Supreme Lord and his devotees that they need not go to any demigod. The word Suprajatamaha, surrounded by many children, is very significant in this verse, for one may have many children, but might not have any qualified children. Here, however, it is stated, Suprajatamaha, that all the children thus attained would be qualified in education, wealth, beauty, and strength, everything complete. Trikritva idamakarnya naro naryathavadrita apraja suprajatamo nirdhano dhanavattamaha. It does not matter whether one is a man or a woman. Anyone who with great respect hears this narration of Prithu Maharaj will become the father of many children if he is without children, and will become the richest of men if he is without money. So, thank you for welcoming us to ISKCON Zurich. It's always so comforting to return to one of Srila Prabhupada's temples and see the beautiful deities and devotees and prasad and everything. It's Prabhupada has created the house in which the whole world can live. So whenever we visit a temple, we just feel so much at home and welcomed and comforted by the powerful process of bhakti which is present therein. So this chapter, titled Maharaj Prithu is Going Back Home, it's the last in the series of chapters in Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, describing various activities of Maharaj Prithu. And it's the end of this last chapter, and these verses are called the Phalashruti, which means the benefit, the phala literally means the fruit, or the benefits acquired by hearing these narrations. And there are several verses that give a list of different benedictions one will attain by hearing the pastimes of Maharaj Prithu. And it even says in this verse one should hear them 3 times. It's interesting, it's not in the translation, but Prabhupada mentions in the purport, Trikritva literally means 3 times, doing it 3 times. So a materialistic person will read this and think of the benefit that he may acquire by hearing about Maharaj Prithu. In previous verse, he could become a king of the world, and he'll get a lot of money, get a lot of children. If he's a Vaishya, he'll become the master of other Vaishyas. And it's interesting, he says if he's a Shudra, he becomes the topmost devotee. And it goes on and on. Similar benedictions are given in each verse in this chapter, end of the chapter. But at the very end, the last couple of verses, they give the real ultimate benefit of hearing about Maharaj Prithu. In verse, 38, 39, that one will go back to Godhead if you take advantage of the story of Maharaj Prithu. And you'll increase your faith and attraction for the lotus feet of the Lord will increase. So, rather than concentrating on the material benefits of hearing this pastimes, as devotees we're obviously interested in the spiritual benefits. But for a materialistic person, they may be more inclined to hear Srimad Bhagavatam or hear these beautiful narrations of the pure devotee of the Lord and his relationship with the Lord if they get some bait, suppose like a bait to attract them, to encourage them to read these stories. Oh, we'll get this benefit, we'll get that benefit. And then they'll be more encouraged to hear Srimad Bhagavatam and to read the stories of Srimad Bhagavatam. But that's not really the purpose of hearing the story of Maharaj Prithu. And as we go through the chapter, that will become clear towards the end. So Prabhupada describes the materialistic persons. They're very fond of money and great families, and they worship demigods to attain these desires. Durga, Shiva, Brahma, Shriyashvarya, Prajat Savaha. And he quotes from the 2nd canto, there's actually a list, a few verses that are describing if you want this benediction, you should worship this demigod. If you want a good husband, you worship Lord Shiva. If you want a good wife, you worship Uma, his wife. And the whole list is given there. Of course, that's not so relevant in the Western setting because this is referring to people coming from a traditional Indian background, Vedic culture, where these things are perhaps followed still today. Even in Lord Chaitanya's time, we hear how the girls of Navadvip, they would go to the bank of the Ganga to worship Lord Shiva to get a good husband. So these things were prevalent in traditional Indian culture, perhaps nowadays less and less. And of course in the Western countries it's not practiced at all. But still, the principle is there that people wish to have a good family, to have plenty of money, to have beauty, to have fame. Actually the 6 opulences of Krishna. Aishvaryasya, so in this verse it mentions Aishvarya. Aishvaryasya samaktasya viryasya yasas Aishvarya jnana vairagya vittayo shandam bhagam tingina. So everyone's mad after these things. And Queen Kunti also says, Janmaishvarya Shrutashli Bir Edaman Vadapuman. Materialistic persons, their goal of life is to increase the facilities for material enjoyment by increasing the wealth, increasing the fame, increasing the beauty, having very high aristocratic birth. But most people, they become so enamored of these things, so distracted, that they cannot approach Krishna. They become very proud. Very proud of their fame, very proud of their beauty, very proud of their opulence. And if someone is very proud, they can't approach the Lord feelingly. They don't even see the need to approach God. Most people, average person, who at least has some higher understanding, they'll approach God for material things. And that's what happens. Most people go to the temple or church and they pray. I have this issue, I have that problem, please, Lord, give me some more money, please help my son graduate, please help my daughter find a good husband. Various material benedictions that people seek from God. Or, please give us our daily bread. This is what the average person, not even average person won't even, these days at least, go to the temple or the church to pray for these things. They'll try to get it on their own strength. But if someone has a little bit of higher understanding, they may pray to God for some materialistic benedictions. But that's really not the purpose of approaching God. That's not the ultimate benefit that we can gain from going to the temple, from approaching the Lord. And in Bhagavad Gita, it's described there are 4 kinds of people who may approach God. Chaturbhita jante mam jana sukriti nojana arto jigyasura artharthi jnani cha bharatarshava. So Krishna lists the 4 kinds of people. One who seeks wealth, one who is distressed, one who is inquisitive, and one who is seeking knowledge. Is that right? Arto jigyasura. So the recommendation is that if one has some material desires, has some something they want, so as I said, the second canto gives a whole list of different demigods whom one can approach for specific benedictions. But after that list is given, then Shukadeva Goswami quotes a very famous verse, Akama sarvakama va moksha kama udharati tivrena bhakti yogana yujeta purusham param. That whether you're akama, means you have no desires, which basically means pure devotee, someone who doesn't want anything from the Lord. Sarvakama va, or one's full of desires, one desires all these things. Shriya Swarya Prajep Sava. Moksha kama, or someone may be frustrated with their material life and they want to get mukti or liberation, they want to cease all engagement, kind of impersonal liberation, moksha kama utarati. It doesn't really matter what one wants. When one wants nothing, one wants everything, or one wants negation of suffering, the recommendation is to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, rather than Durga, Shiva, Brahma, Ganesh, etc. Why is that? Does anyone know? Why is it recommended to approach the Lord rather than the demigods? Actually, the Shastra says to approach this demigod for that benediction. So why does Bhagavatam suggest or recommend that one worship Krishna instead?
If you water the root of a tree, the whole tree gets benefit.
Yeah, definitely true.
Well, he will give you what you want, but at the same time he will take away the desire to continue doing it.
Yeah.
What the demigods will just put more desire inside.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's the answer I was looking for. Yeah, Krishna, he's the master of all the demigods, so whatever they may be able to bestow upon you, he can certainly do that also. But the demigods are, they're more just in the business of receiving worship and giving benedictions. They're not, because most of the demigods themselves are absorbed in sense gratification. If you hear what happens in the heavenly planets, even in Bhagavatam, there are many descriptions of the demigods and the different nonsense they get up to, and different mischief they get up to, and get into trouble with the demons, and they get into trouble with the rishis, and Indra is sending apsaras to make the rishis fall down, and the rishis are cursing Indra, and it's a whole like a soap opera going on of cursing, counter-cursing, illicit affairs, somaras, all sorts of things are going on in the heavenly planets. So even if someone approaches the demigods or such things, they may get the particular desire they want, but they won't get anything further than that. They won't get anything that will actually give lasting benefit. Just like so many times it's said that you come into this world with nothing and we leave with nothing. So even if we worship demigods, we get some benefits that only last for this lifetime, or maybe not even the whole lifetime. When we die, then we have to continue on in the next body according to our karma. If we worship demigods, there's a good chance of being elevated to the heavenly planets. But that's also temporary. Once your punya runs out, then again you have to fall down and take a lower birth, a human birth or animal birth, or depending on your karma. So it's just, it's all within the samsara chakra, it's all within the cycle of birth and death, sometimes going to the higher planets, sometimes going to the lower planets, sometimes going to the animal species. And like that, 8,400,000 species of life, we can just circulate, going around and around for eternity. But if one connects to Krishna, even in a materialistic way, then his link starts, and then he has a chance to actually break out of the cycle and actually get some eternal benefit, something transcendental, which will raise the consciousness of the living entity and give him an opportunity to go back to Godhead. So in this regard, there's a very interesting passage from Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Krishna is talking just about this very point. This is from Madhya Lila, chapter 22, when Lord Chaitanya is instructing Sanatana Goswami. And I won't read all of the verses, but a couple of them are very relevant for this point here. This is verse 38 and 39. Krishna kahe, ama bhaje maake vishay sukh, amrita chari visha maake ei bor murk. Anyone knows what murkha is? Murk? Fool. Murkha means fool. It even sounds like murk, fool, foolish. So Krishna is talking. Lord Chaitanya is, he is Krishna, so he's presenting what Krishna is saying himself. Krishna says, if one engages in my transcendental loving service, but at the same time wants the opulence of material enjoyment, he is very, very foolish. Indeed, he is just like a person who gives up ambrosia, who gives up nectar to drink poison. Ami bigga, ei murkhe, vishay kenu dibo. So Krishna is saying, I am intelligent. Bigga means learned. Ei murkhe vishay kenu dibo. Why should I give this person material enjoyment, vishay? Shacharanamrita diya vishaya khulaibo. So the translation is, since I am very intelligent, why should I give this fool material prosperity? Instead, I shall induce him to take the nectar of the shelter of my lotus feet and make him forget illusory material enjoyment. So this is the point that Prabhu answered. So why would he give something that's going to just that any demigod can give? Then what is the benefit of approaching Krishna? If the demigod can give you material enjoyment and Krishna gives you the same material enjoyment, there's no difference. But why we should worship Krishna is because he has a higher purpose. He wants the living entity who has turned away from him since time immemorial. Krishna wants the living entity to come back. Just like we see the painting right here, Gopakumar returning back to Godhead, and Krishna is embracing him. So Krishna is trying always, and he's in our hearts. He's there. Whenever we are in any situation, any body, Krishna is there as Paramatma with us. And it's described that Samana Vrikshe Purusho Namagno, just like there are two birds on a tree. So the soul and the super soul are together. One bird is trying to eat the fruits of the tree. Sometimes it's sour, sometimes it's sweet. And the Paramatma, he's just observing, when is the soul going to turn towards me? When is he going to remember me? And he gives different reminders. He sends his pure devotees to preach to us. He sends the Shastra. He gives the process of a devotional service so the living entity can be attracted. And it may take many hundreds, thousands, millions of lifetimes, and finally that soul may turn towards the Lord. But Krishna wants that. Krishna is waiting for that moment. When will that living entity turn his face again to the Lord and surrender? So the process starts like this when even the materialistic person worships Krishna, even for not for the right reason. Obviously, we always say that we shouldn't approach the Lord for material things. But if someone has material desires, then better approach the Lord than anyone else, than any other demigod. So Krishna says, since I am very intelligent, why should I give this fool material prosperity? Instead, I shall induce him to take the nectar of the shelter of my lotus feet and make him forget illusory material enjoyment. So he gives the Amrita and Visha. Visha is poison and Amrita is nectar. So why, when my lotus feet are so nectarian, why should this foolish person go for the poison? I mean, it's an obvious choice. If you have a pot of nectar here and a pot of poison here, no one is going to take the poison. But unfortunately, living entity, you're attracted to so many materialistic things which are considered poison, and we don't accept the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet or the nectar emanating from his lotus feet. So Krishna, he purifies us by giving the higher taste. And so this is a very important point, the higher taste, right? In Bhagavad Gita also in the 2nd chapter, the verses there, Vishaya Vinivartate, same word, Vishaya, material enjoyment. And actually Visha also means poison. So there's a connection between material enjoyment and poison, because actually it's poisoning our consciousness when we engage in sense gratification. And literally, many of the popular ways of gratifying senses in the material world are actually literally poisonous. Smoking, drinking, drugs. They're actually poisons that enter our body and even destroy our health. That's why nowadays you see on the signs of cigarettes, this smoking causes infertility, smoking causes cancer. They have to, they're almost obliged to inform people that if you do this, you may get some pleasure, but ultimately you're going to get a lot of suffering. So the higher taste is required. Otherwise, you can't expect someone to give up what they know unless they get something better. And Prabhupada gives the example, like if the child is eating some dirt, you see small babies, like 1-year-olds or something, crawl around, they put everything in the mouth. Rocks, sand, leaves, bugs, anything. But if you give them something nice and sweet to eat, then they're much more likely to take that. Even Krishna was accused of eating dirt. So if you get the higher taste, Vishaya Vinivartante, Nirahara Sidehina, Rasoham Apsu, Raso Varja, what is it? Oh gosh, I heard that last for a long time. Vishaya Vinivartante, Raso Varja, Raso Pyasyan. Paramdrishta, the higher taste. Even the cookbook is mentioned, the famous cookbook that we sell, it's higher taste. So when one has the higher taste, then naturally one gives up the lower taste. So when one experiences the beauty of Krishna consciousness, the taste of prasadam, the sound of the kirtan, the darshan of the deities, the smell of the incense, all our senses can be engaged in devotional service. And then the sounds and sights and tastes of the material world, they don't hold much pleasure anymore. We were just in Bhaktivedanta Manor and they celebrated the arrival of Srila Prabhupada to America. That was on the 17th. And when Srila Prabhupada first arrived at Boston, he went for a little walk. The first place he actually arrived wasn't New York. He arrived at Boston on the Jaladuta, and that's where he entered America officially, and then they went on to New York the next day or a couple of days later. So Prabhupada's first experience of America, Captain Pandya took him for a walk around, the area near where the ship was harbored. And in 2015, it was the 50th anniversary of that event when Prabhupada made the journey to America. So we were actually lucky to be present in Boston. There was a festival, many devotees came and sannyasis, and to reenact or recreate Prabhupada's experience of coming to Boston 50 years ago. And Prabhupada wrote a very beautiful song, bhajan there. So we also walked around the same area, just around the docks where Prabhupada, the first place that Prabhupada would have seen of America. And even 50 years later, it was like bars and restaurants and nightclubs and broken glass on the ground and the whole really tamasic kind of atmosphere, even now. And I was just imagining Prabhupada walking in this place, he's immediately confronted. It's not like he came to Switzerland and saw the beautiful mountains and the cows and all that. was right in the heart of materialism as soon as he stepped off the ship. And I can imagine, for him coming from Vrindavan, Sattvic life, pure devotee, to see that immediately, that made an impression on him, and that's why he went back to the boat and he wrote his song. These people are Rajas Tamogunu Ere Sabai Achana. These people are so covered over by ignorance and passion. How will they hear your message? Krishna, you have to help me speak a language that they'll understand, that they'll give up these things. Because even, today it's like that. So, one needs the higher taste. So when Prabhupada eventually started his first center, it's interesting to note, he didn't really stress on the 4 regulative principles right away. He didn't. There were some devotees who were still smoking, they were still taking drugs even. Devotees means the very first people who came to Srila Prabhupada. So, how did he attract them? It was by kirtan and by prasadam, basically. And also, he started speaking on Bhagavad Gita, giving the philosophy. And only after some time, when they had got the taste for prasadam, they got the taste for kirtan, they got the taste for Prabhupada's association, then he introduced the 4 regulative principles. And that also was, maybe it took some time. Because once you have the higher taste, then it's easy to give up the lower taste. And when we go preaching, the first time we meet someone on the street, we don't say, you have to stop eating meat, you have to stop drinking, you have to, no, it's not like that. But naturally, people are, they lose interest in the lower taste once they have the higher taste. And that's the experience of, devotees all over the world. We might have done so many things previously, but once you taste the nectar of Krishna consciousness, then it becomes disgusting. The same things that someone may have been their whole life prior to coming to Krishna consciousness, after a short time of purification and receiving the higher taste, those things seem to be disgusting. And there's absolutely no interest in going back to those sinful activities. So, that's the preaching tactic, that rather than being negative in one sense, saying you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, these things are all sinful, you're all demons, that people are not going to listen to that kind of message. But Srila Prabhupada, he gave the positive alternative, the holy name of the Lord, prasadam, philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and Prabhupada was personally cooking for the devotees and living with them as an equal. And they were so, attracted to his personality, attracted to his consciousness, his message, that they were able to surrender themselves. And that's the ultimate benefit of human life. The example is given of Dhruva Maharaj, like as I said, there were 4 kinds of people who surrendered to the Lord. So Dhruva Maharaj is given as the example for the one who was seeking wealth. And we all know the story. It's in the 4th canto, so you've probably gone through it recently. Dhruva Maharaj, he was a Kshatriya, and he wanted to get a kingdom greater than Lord Brahma's even, and Lord Brahma is the master of the universe. So he got offended by his father and stepmother, and Kshatriyas have a hot temper and kind of very determined spirit. So his purpose of doing austerities was to get a kingdom which is even greater than his fathers or grandfathers. So fortunately, his mother recommended him to worship Lord Vishnu. And if he'd worshipped Lord Brahma, the story would have been very different. But he worshipped Lord Vishnu, he chanted Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and just in a few months, his austerities were so severe that the whole universe was being disturbed, and Lord Vishnu came to him to stop his austerities. And when he saw Lord Vishnu, when he had darshan of the Lord, then all his material desires, for which he was so determined, so fixed, that was his goal, and he did all that to get the great kingdom, it just melted away. When he saw the Lord, he realized that there's nothing higher than what I'm experiencing right now, having darshan of the Lord face to face, and he had no more desire for material prosperity. And he said that I was searching, Swamim Tritato Varam Nayache, I don't want any benediction from you. And the verse is given that Ramaj is talking about himself, that I was searching for some broken pieces of glass. The thing that I wanted, he compared it to just some broken glass which you just sweep up and throw in the bin. But I found what I attained was the most valuable jewel, the darshan of the Lord. So he was purified by just having darshan of the Lord, and he had no more material desires. So like that, if we can attract people when they come to the temple, they may be coming with some material motive, they may come to pray. Many temples in India, when it's exam time, so many students go to the temple because they want some blessings from the Lord or from the demigod to pass their exams. But if we can attract them, they come to the temple, they see the deity, they hear kirtan, they hear class, they take prasad. That's the way we can connect them to Krishna, and then their spiritual journey will start. And eventually, hopefully, they give up their lower desires and surrender to Krishna and enjoy that bhakti rasa, the amrita from the Lord's lotus feet that he talks about in these verses. Yeah, another interesting story Prabhupada gives in this connection, that in India it's quite common, the Bhagavatam recital, where they have the Bhagavad Sapta and they speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And pious people, they go and attend. Of course, many times the speakers are not actually very devotional, and many times the people only want to hear the Rasa Lila pastimes. Prabhupada condemns that. But he also gave an example of this one story where there was a Bhagavatam recital going on, and one person was listening, and the speaker was talking about how Mother Yashoda dresses Krishna in the mornings, and all the priceless jewels that Mother Yashoda puts on Krishna when he goes to herd the cows. And this person was a thief, the listener. And he thought, wow, so many jewels on this little boy, and he's just in the forest, not protected. I'm just this would be like my big heist, rather than stealing here and there a little bit of money here and there. If I go to Vrindavan and I find this boy, I can get all the money I could ever imagine at once. I don't want to have to keep on stealing. So that was his motivation, to steal from Krishna. So he actually went to Vrindavan and was searching for Krishna. And he was so absorbed, so eager to see Krishna, that he saw Krishna in the forest. I don't know if you can take it 100% literally, but anyway, the point is there that he saw Krishna, he had darshan of Krishna. And Prabhupada tells the story in his own words. And I said, "Oh, Krishna, you're so beautiful. Please give me some of your jewels." And Krishna says, "Oh, no, I can't. My mother will be angry." If you hear the story from Prabhupada, it's very sweet. And, "No, Krishna, please, I need something from you." And then they had the interaction that he spoke to Krishna, and then he realized that actually, I don't want it anymore. I'm not interested. And he lost the desire for stealing from Krishna and became a devotee of the Lord. So like that, in any way someone can come in touch with Krishna, then there's eternal ultimate benefit, or in touch with the process of devotional service. So I had a few other side points, but I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or questions from what we discussed so far.
You were speaking about higher taste. Can you give some advice?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much. You were speaking about higher taste, and can you maybe give some advices if someone gains the higher taste, but then during the process of devotional service he loses it, and how to continue if you lose the taste in devotional service? Thank you.
Yeah, it's true. There are many times we may be, considering that we've been conditioned for eternity, who knows how many lifetimes we've been going through this cycle, and so many impressions are there in the mind, so many desires are there, we struggle with our senses. So it's not unusual that we may sometimes struggle. In fact, Prabhupada even said, don't be surprised by the ones who leave, be surprised by the ones who stay. Because it's a struggle, and the whole materialistic civilization is pushing against us in one sense. It's like you're trying to swim up the river instead of with the flow. Because as soon as you step out of the temple, you see, that what everyone is doing, and naturally we can get influenced. Ajamil, he just saw one, prostitute embracing a drunk man, and his whole life turned in that direction. And we go out on Harinam and see that, everywhere pretty much. So yeah, it's not easy. I don't know if there's any particular secret that you can apply in this case, but by staying in the association of devotees, especially if you have someone you can share your struggles with, who can help you. If we follow Srila Prabhupada's program, it's very complete. The morning program, evening program, visiting the holy places, engaging in the processes of devotional service, and going to India regularly, attending festivals. Those things really raise the consciousness. So if we're struggling, we should just really try to take shelter in that, and especially if you have someone, a mentor, Siksha Guru, who can give you personalized guidance, that'll really make a difference. Mostly people struggle when they're alone, and they feel they can't share, with others what they're feeling, even the devotees, so they don't have close friends, and they try to sort things out on their own and, separate from the association. That's when really those things can have a lot of effect on our materialistic desires. But if we have close association, even if you're married, you have a spouse that you can talk to openly, or you have a close friends in the ashram, or we need that kind of shelter and we need to be able to be honest and reveal our issues, our difficulties, and have someone who's understanding and kind, who can help us get through them. Because we know philosophically that there's nothing higher than the process we have in the Bhagavatam. There's no scripture higher than Bhagavatam. There's no name of the Lord more powerful than Krishna's name. So we know philosophically it's mostly sensual distractions that may give us trouble. So we have to try to focus the mind, and especially if we have that personal guidance that someone can give us, I think there'll be very, very much protection before we actually do something wrong. And even if a devotee does fall down or has some problems, that can also be used as a impetus to never do that again. We see some devotees that have some issues, they may have some fall down, but they'll come back and they'll realize that, I'm really struggling, I need help, and they'll become very humble and engage in, menial service to purify themselves. And actually, it could be it may be one step back, but that will actually propel them forward and make them very serious in their spiritual life. So like that, a few thoughts. I don't know if it answers exactly what you're asking. Anyone want to comment on that?
Should I say it again?
Yeah, otherwise you can.
I had another.
Yeah, sure.
I had two questions, if I may. But if I could please request you to remind us the text number of this verse you quoted from Madhya Lila.
Yeah, it's
Chapter
22:38. Oh, 38, 39 actually.
My first question was relating to this aspect of higher taste, and the second was relating to the text itself.
Mm-hmm.
But because you mentioned how we also witness how when we get the higher taste, we give up the lower taste. And the process of Krishna consciousness is so powerful that sometimes you can witness it even in your own lives. Mm. But I was thinking in the Madhya Lila itself, around 19 to 22, these weeds of devotional service are mentioned, Labh, Pratishta.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, why is it that this lower taste we are not able to give up? Although we have higher taste, but this impediment is so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Although it is subtle, but we realize it, but it's so difficult to overcome. If you could please share your thoughts on this.
Yeah, in one sense it's easy to give up the gross sense gratification, but the subtle ones, they're not so visible. And the desire for fame, desire for position, even in Krishna consciousness, can be very distracting. So that's why, the Lord Chaitanya is stressed so much, and I don't know here, but many temples they chant Shastakam every day, Srinada Pisanishana, Tarori Vasishnara, to be humble, to be tolerant, because that pride can be a very great, and we've seen it in our movement, especially after Srila Prabhupada left the Zonal Acharya days, where the quite young devotees, most of them were in their 20s and 30s. They were already sannyasis and gurus, and they didn't have the philosophy down very correctly. They were being worshipped on the equal level as Srila Prabhupada, and became proud. And you can see it in multiple cases of how that pride and disrespecting the God brothers and considering themselves so much more elevated than everyone was a cause of fall down. So it's happened in our society. It can happen again. I'm sure that in those verses, Prabhupada must have given some direct solutions for these things. But we have to remind ourselves, who we are. Actually, just an insignificant servant, and actually the servant of the servant of the servant is considered the highest position, not the master. That's why devotees are always trying to serve each other. Not in an artificial way, touch your feet, and not just in an external artificial way, but actually trying to serve each other, humbly, and that's the most glorious position. Krishna even says that one who's acting as my devotee is not my devotee. One who says he's my devotee is not really my devotee, but the devotee of my devotee is actually my devotee. So that's our process. That's what's stressed. Gopi Bhartu Patakamleo Dasa Dasa Anadasa. The lower one is, the higher one is in one sense. So that's why we don't like to accept worship, accept service, accept respect, or be glorified. Now that's actually totally against devotional mood. Humility and tolerance and respecting others. This is, if everyone's like that, everyone's trying to respect each other, no one's expecting respect, it becomes a very kind of a wholesome, and it's not artificial, again, it has to be genuine, but it becomes a very nice reciprocation. Whereas if someone's elevated and glorified, and we very easily can go to the head. We have to consider ourselves very, even Srila Prabhupada, the devotees asked him, what do you, they would see him praying, and said, oh, I'm praying so I don't fall into Maya. And Prabhupada himself was revealing that. Of course, Prabhupada couldn't fall into Maya, but as an example for us, if Srila Prabhupada is considering that Maya is so strong, he can sweep one away, even one of the senses can be a cause of distraction and sweep one away. So that humility, we pray to the Lord, we take shelter of the devotees to remain humble and remain simple, and don't get proud of any recognition that may come as we perform devotional service. So I think it's going to stress a lot, humility and tolerance and respecting others. So we have to, and basically that's the guideline we have, the mantra to remind ourselves. Lord Chaitanya even said we should string that verse around our necks to always remind ourselves we are lower than the straw in the street, more tolerant than a tree, like that. It's given in our process, but yeah, it is definitely a danger, and have to be constantly guarding against that. And if we see someone, maybe in our friends, or if we feel that, again, we can remind each other of the dangers, the pitfalls of pride and labha, puja, pratishtha, those things.
Can I just, because usually we go till 8:30.
Oh, okay. Is it all?
And if there are any questions, they can also be discussed individually.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who have other services,
Sure.
have to take breakfast.
Sure, that's fine. Well, thank you for your attention. Hare Krishna. Mantrashma Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. His grace Ananda Tirtha Prabhu Ki
Jai.
Breakfast is served in Prasadam Hall, just next door. Okay, kannst du noch da abstellen?
In text 31 there is this mentioning how whoever hears the glories of the Maharaj goes to the same kingdom as him. And then suddenly I felt like there's a shift in the Varnashram about how he can become rich. And then again it goes back to where it was. Very interesting.
I was looking in the purpose to see whether not really, not specify why these things are. But again, the conclusion is there that they're not kind of very spiritual anymore. Maybe just something to attract to the materialist to a conjugalographer.
Das wäre nur einfach.
This is very specific, I think. Many verses talking about material things.
Yeah, and it starts like 31 talks about how this planet is being. So it's something still auspicious in the way like it's still spiritual and devotional. And then Prabhupada talks about like but then it begins to how a Brahmana becomes a better Brahmana and how the rich soul becomes rich. So there's a shift.
Yeah. But if you see the purports, if you see the verses without the purports, then it's even harder.
Also bei mir sind sie aber fast sicher. Du hast glaube ich auch nicht, hast du bei mir auch nicht probiert? Ich habe bei mir ein bisschen abgetan. Am Anfang war es warm, habe ich ein bisschen abgetan. Und jetzt ist es nicht warm, so wirklich weniger als Lava. Dann habe ich mehr gedrückt und jetzt blubbert es die ganze Zeit.
Das ist komisch. Die Herzen, ich habe die ganz abgestellt.
Ich habe es wirklich
Aber that's
immer noch nicht. Ich habe das Gefühl, es hat auch etwas damit zu tun, dass man das Wasser reingeht. Die sind ja müssen noch das Wasser reingeht. Kann man vorstellen, dass sie haben sich gelüftet.
People come and they hear getting prashadam and they lose taste for meat and other things. That's a common experience for most.
So basically the experiences that you're having.